You think silence means failure, that stepping back means you're losing. But that's where you're wrong. The loud ones crave attention. The dangerous ones build in the dark. While others perform, you prepare. While others talk, you calculate. Disappearance isn't weakness, it's control. It's choosing precision over noise, purpose over approval. Men like Thomas Shelby never announced their moves, they executed them. And by the time anyone noticed, it was already too late. So if you've gone quiet lately, understand this. You're not falling behind. You're separating yourself from the ordinary and stepping into something far more powerful than before. They'll call it laziness. They'll say you've lost momentum. Some will assume you're burned out. Others will quietly label you a failure. That's how society works. It misreads silence because it fears what it cannot measure. In a world addicted to visibility, stepping back looks like weakness. But what they fail to understand is this. Not all absence is collapse. Some of it is calculation. You are not disappearing. You are restructuring. There's a difference between someone who quits and someone who withdraws with intention. Most people don't know that difference because they've never had the discipline to step away from noise long enough to rebuild themselves. They stay visible, stay busy, stay loud just to feel relevant. But you chose distance. He watches you step back and he knows this isn't confusion. This isn't hesitation. This is awareness. The kind that only comes when someone realizes that who they are is no longer enough for where they're going. Smart people don't constantly engage. They withdraw when the environment becomes too loud, too chaotic, too distracting. Overstimulation isn't just exhausting, it's dangerous. It clouds judgment. It weakens focus. And people like you understand that clarity requires space. So you isolate, not to escape, but to think, to recalibrate, to strip away outdated versions of yourself that no longer serve your direction. Identity isn't fixed, it evolves, and evolution demands separation. You cannot become something new while constantly surrounded by what you used to be. This is where most people fall apart. They mistake movement for progress. They chase activity instead of alignment. But you paused, and that pause is where the shift begins. He sees it clearly now. You're not reacting anymore. You're preparing. Every quiet moment, every step back, every ignored distraction, it's all part of a larger design. Execution doesn't start when people are watching. It starts long before that, in silence. And history has always favored those who understood this. Men like Thomas Shelby didn't waste time explaining themselves. The man who built empires in silence didn't need validation. He needed precision. While others questioned his absence, he was engineering outcomes they couldn't even comprehend. So let them misunderstand you. Let them label your silence. Because while they're busy trying to define what you're doing, you're becoming someone they won't be able to ignore. Noise is easy. Anyone can be loud. Anyone can talk about plans, broadcast intentions, and perform confidence for an audience that was never invested to begin with. But understand this clearly, loudness is often insecurity wearing a disguise. It's the need to be seen before anything has been built. It's compensation, not confidence. Real confidence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't chase validation. It doesn't need approval to move forward. When you truly understand your trajectory, where you're going, what you're building, and who you're becoming, you stop explaining yourself. Because explanations are for people who are unsure, and you're not unsure anymore. Look around. Most of what you see today is performance. Social media has turned ambition into entertainment. People aren't building, they're showcasing. They document the idea, the grind, the aesthetic, but rarely the result. It's a loop of visibility without substance. And the more noise they create, the more they convince themselves they're progressing. But you see through it now. Because deep down, you've realized something most people never will. Talking about it feels productive, but it replaces the work. It gives the illusion of movement without requiring the discipline of execution. And once you fall into that trap, you're no longer building, you're performing. That's why you pulled back. That's why your presence became selective. Because you understand a principle most people avoid. Silence is control. When you stop broadcasting your every move, you remove external influence. No opinions. No unnecessary feedback. No energy wasted on proving something before it exists. You move cleaner, sharper, more focused. You protect your process. He watches you now, saying less, doing more, and he recognizes it immediately. This is not withdrawal, it's refinement. The unnecessary has been cut. What remains is intention. So let others chase attention. Let them speak too soon, celebrate too early, and reveal too much. That's their game, but it's not yours. You don't need applause. You need results, because results speak in a language noise never can. They don't require explanation. They don't ask for permission. They simply exist. And when they do, they silence every doubt that was ever spoken against you. If Thomas Shelby taught anything, it's this. The most dangerous man in the room is not the one talking. It's the one observing, calculating, waiting. And when he finally moves, it's already over. Leveling up isn't something the world sees first. It doesn't start with money, status, or recognition. It starts in a place no one applauds inside you. And what happens there isn't pretty. It's not motivation. It's destruction. Because before you rise, something in you has to die. You're not just improving habits. You're breaking them. Patterns that once defined you, comfort-driven decisions, delayed discipline, emotional reactions, they don't survive this phase. You begin to see them for what they are, limitations. And once you see clearly, you can't go back. So you start cutting. You kill the weak versions of yourself, the one that needed approval, the one that hesitated, the one that chose comfort over growth. That version doesn't belong where you're going. And deep down you know it. But knowing it and acting on it are two different things. That's where the internal war begins. He sees you isolating, not because you're lost, but because you're rebuilding. There's intention behind your distance now. You're not withdrawing from life. You're withdrawing from distractions that kept you average. Every moment alone is not emptiness. It's construction. Quiet, controlled, deliberate construction. And with that comes discomfort. Because growth isn't smooth. It's friction. It's waking up and choosing discipline when your mind resists it. It's outgrowing environments, habits, even people, and realizing that evolution has a cost. The more you change, the less familiar your own life starts to feel. That's the part no one prepares you for. Loneliness. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from no longer relating. Conversations feel shallow. Environments feel limiting. You start noticing things you once ignored. And slowly, you detach, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity, because you can't evolve while staying emotionally tied to what you've outgrown. This is the identity shift. You're no longer who you were, but you're not fully who you're becoming yet. You exist in between, where clarity is forming, but certainty hasn't fully arrived. It's uncomfortable, it's unstable, but it's necessary. Most people retreat here. They go back to what's familiar because transformation feels too isolating. But you didn't. You stayed. You faced it. And that's what separates you. Because real growth demands distance from old habits, old thinking, old environments, and most importantly, your old self. You cannot carry your past identity into your future and expect different results. Something has to be left behind, and you chose to leave it behind. Men like Thomas Shelby understood this at a level most never will. They didn't evolve in front of an audience. They didn't explain their transformations step by step. They disappeared completely. And when they returned, they weren't improved. They were unrecognizable. And that's exactly where you're headed. Your environment is not designed for your evolution. It's designed for stability, for predictability. People grow comfortable with who you've been, not who you're becoming. And the moment you begin to shift, that comfort gets disrupted. So they resist. Not always aggressively, not always intentionally, but subtly, consistently. Because the version of you they understand is the version they can anticipate, the version they can categorize, the version they feel safe around. But growth makes you unpredictable, and people don't trust what they can't predict. They preferred you when you were accessible, when your behavior aligned with their expectations, when your ambitions didn't challenge their own limitations. But now, something has changed. You're quieter, more selective, less available, and that difference unsettles them. So they start asking questions. Why have you pulled away? Why aren't you the same? What's wrong with you? And when answers don't come, assumptions take their place. They label you, they misread you, they doubt you, because it's easier to reduce your transformation than to confront their own stagnation. He knows they will talk, they always do, not because they understand, but because they don't. And people have a habit of criticizing what they can't access. But none of that is your concern anymore. You are not here to be understood. That's the part you have to accept. Clarity doesn't require consensus. Growth doesn't require approval. And your path was never meant to make sense to everyone watching from the outside. Because they're not living it, you are. The mistake would be slowing down just to make others comfortable. Explaining yourself just to maintain old connections. Shrinking your ambition so it fits within someone else's expectations. That's how people stay stuck. But you didn't choose this path to stay the same. You chose it to become something more. And that comes with a cost, misunderstanding being one of them. So let them question you. Let them doubt you. Let them create their own versions of your story. Because while they're busy trying to define you, you're evolving beyond anything they can comprehend. Thomas Shelby never asked for permission to change. He didn't pause to explain his next move or justify his decisions. He moved forward calculated, unapologetic, and focused, and neither should you. Disappearing isn't random. It's not emotional. It's not a reaction to pressure or failure. It's a decision, a calculated shift in how you allocate your time, your energy, and your attention. Because at a certain point, you realize something critical. Distraction is expensive, so you start cutting it. Not dramatically, not for show, quietly, precisely. You remove what doesn't contribute to your direction. Conversations that go nowhere, environments that dilute your focus, habits that consume energy without producing results. You don't announce it, you just stop participating. Access becomes limited, not because you've become arrogant, but because you've become intentional. Not everyone deserves proximity to your process. Not everyone needs to know what you're building. And the more selective you become, the more control you gain. That's the shift. Fewer conversations, less visibility, more execution. You stop explaining your goals and start working toward them. You stop sharing ideas prematurely and start refining them in private. Because you've understood something most people overlook. Exposure too early weakens structure. So you move differently now. This is what can't be seen from the outside, the invisible preparation phase. The stage where nothing looks impressive, nothing gets recognition, and nothing feels externally validated. But internally, everything is changing. Skills are being built. Systems are being created. Standards are being raised. And it all happens without noise. You don't disappear to hide. You disappear to build. That distinction matters, because hiding comes from fear. But what you're doing comes from clarity. You've identified what needs to be done, and you've removed everything that interferes with it. He watches you step away from noise, and he recognizes discipline, not motivation, not temporary focus. Discipline, not temporary focus. Discipline, the kind that doesn't depend on mood or external pressure. The kind that operates consistently, even when no one is watching. That's where real progress lives. Because when attention is removed, excuses are exposed. There's no audience to impress, no validation to chase, just you and the standard you've set for yourself. And if that standard is high enough, it demands isolation. Most people can't handle that. They return to noise because silence forces them to confront their lack of structure. But you stayed, you leaned into it, and now your process is becoming sharper, more efficient, more controlled. You're not reacting anymore. You're executing. Thomas Shelby operated the same way. Every move was calculated long before anyone noticed. By the time others caught on, the outcome was already decided. There was no chaos in his approach, only precision, and that's exactly what you're building now. A version of yourself that doesn't rely on visibility to prove progress, because the results will speak when the time comes. Availability feels generous. It feels polite. It feels like the right thing to do. But in reality, constant availability comes at a cost, and that cost is your authority. Because the more accessible you are, the less valuable your presence becomes. Scarcity creates value. That's not opinion, it's principle. What's always available is rarely respected. What's limited is protected, prioritized, and taken seriously. And once you understand that, the way you manage your time and access begins to change. You stop responding instantly. You stop showing up everywhere. You stop making yourself reachable to everyone. Not out of ego, but out of discipline. Because being available to everyone means being owned by everyone. Their expectations, their interruptions, their priorities. They start dictating your time, and slowly, without realizing it, you lose control over your own direction. That's how authority disappears. But when you withdraw, something shifts. Your presence gains weight. People notice the absence. They feel the distance. And suddenly, access to you is no longer assumed, it's valued. Conversations become more intentional. Interactions become more focused. And your time starts carrying significance again. He observes this change carefully. You're no longer reacting to every call, every message, every demand. You're choosing when to engage. And that choice, that control, is what separates you from the average. Because boundaries create structure, and structure creates power. This is the psychological shift most people never make. They confuse accessibility with importance. They believe being needed is the same as being respected. But those are not the same thing. Being needed often means being used. Being respected means being valued, even in your absence. So you draw the line. Clear, firm, unapologetic. Stop giving access to people who haven't earned it. Not everyone deserves your time. Not everyone deserves your attention. And definitely not everyone deserves insight into your plans. Access should be earned through alignment, trust, and value, not granted out of habit or obligation. That's how you protect your focus. That's how you maintain control. Thomas Shelby operated within that same principle. He was never easy to reach, never overly available, and because of that, his presence carried weight. When he spoke, people listened. When he moved, people noticed. He wasn't everywhere. He didn't need to be. Because men like him understood something most ignore. When you become selective with your presence, you become impossible to replace. What you're doing now isn't surface-level change. It's not a temporary phase or a burst of motivation. It's deeper than that. You are becoming someone new, not gradually, not accidentally, but intentionally. And that kind of transformation demands more than effort. It demands structure. Mental discipline becomes your foundation. You start controlling what you focus on, what you consume, what you allow into your mind. Distractions don't just waste time anymore. They interfere with direction. So you become selective, sharper, more aware of where your attention goes. Because now you understand that attention shapes identity. Then comes emotional control. You stop reacting the way you used to. Situations that once triggered you no longer have the same effect. Not because life got easier, but because you became stronger. You learned to pause, to assess, to respond instead of react. That shift alone separates you from most people. Because emotions, when uncontrolled, lead to inconsistency, and inconsistency destroys progress. But you're not operating like that anymore. You're thinking long-term now. Every decision starts aligning with a bigger picture. Short-term comfort loses its appeal when it conflicts with long-term results. You begin asking different questions. Does this move me forward? Does this align with who I'm becoming? And if the answer is no, you cut it without hesitation. That's the level you're operating on. But none of this is visible yet. Because real transformation doesn't announce itself. It builds quietly, beneath the surface, long before it shows externally. And that's the phase you're in right now. The invisible phase, where habits are being rebuilt from the ground up. You're not just adjusting routines, you're designing them with intention. Every action starts to serve a purpose. Wake-up times, work patterns, even rest at all, becomes structured. Your thinking patterns evolve too. You stop defaulting to doubt. You stop entertaining distractions disguised as opportunities. You begin to think in systems, in outcomes, in precision. It's no longer about trying, it's about executing with clarity. He sees the shift in you, less talking, more precision. There's no need to announce what you're doing anymore because your focus has become internal. controlled, directed. And that's where real identity is built, not in public, not through validation, but in silence. You are not the same person anymore. Act like it. That means letting go of behaviors that no longer align. It means refusing to fall back into patterns that once defined you. It means holding yourself to a higher standard, even when no one else is watching. Because the truth is, most people try to change their lives without changing themselves, and that never works. You understood something different. You realized that external results are a reflection of internal identity. So instead of chasing outcomes, you started reconstructing who you are at your core. And once that foundation shifts, everything else follows. Thomas Shelby didn't just change his circumstances. He changed the way he thought, the way he moved, the way he made decisions. His transformation wasn't situational, it was psychological. And that's exactly what you're doing now. Quietly, precisely, completely. You're not becoming better, you're becoming different. And once that process is complete, there's no going back. The return doesn't begin with an announcement. There's no warning, no build-up, no need to explain where you've been. Because when the work has been done properly, explanation becomes irrelevant. The comeback is quiet but undeniable. You don't walk in trying to prove anything. You don't revisit old conversations or justify your absence. That version of you, the one that needed to be understood, is gone. What remains is something far more controlled. You demonstrate, not through words, but through presence. There's a difference now. It shows in how you carry yourself, in how you respond or don't respond, in how you move with intention instead of urgency. People notice it immediately, even if they can't explain it. Confidence. Not loud, not forced but stable. Grounded. Unshaken by opinions that once would have distracted you. Clarity. You're no longer scattered. Your decisions are direct, focused. There's no hesitation in your actions because everything you do now aligns with a defined path, and most importantly, results. Because while others were watching, talking, guessing, you were building quietly, consistently. And now, what you've built is visible, not as a performance but as proof. He watches you return, sharper, colder, untouchable. There's no chaos in your movement anymore, no wasted energy. You've eliminated what slowed you down, what distracted you, what diluted your focus. What's left is precision. Every action has purpose. Every step has direction. And that's what makes it undeniable. Because transformation, when it's real, doesn't need validation. It speaks for itself. People start connecting the dots, the silence, the distance, the shift. What they once misunderstood now begins to make sense. But by then, it's too late to question it. The results have already answered everything. That's the power of doing the work in silence. You don't need to announce your level up. They will see it. They'll see it in your discipline, in your boundaries, in the way you no longer tolerate what once drained you, in the way you operate without seeking approval, and most of all, in the outcomes you produce. Because outcomes don't lie, and when they're backed by discipline, they don't fade either. Most people try to return louder to prove they've changed, but volume doesn't create impact. Substance does, and what you've built carries weight now, not because you said it would, but because it exists. That's the difference. Thomas Shelby never returned with noise. He returned with leverage, with control, with a presence that shifted the room without needing to dominate it. His strength wasn't in what he said it was, in what he had already set in motion. And you've stepped into that same space. You're no longer reacting to the world around you. You're influencing it. Quietly, directly, decisively. This is what silence was building toward. Not recognition, but transformation. Not attention, but authority. And now that you've returned, there's nothing left to explain. Only one thing left to do. Keep moving. Disappearance was never your weakness. It was your advantage. While others stayed visible, you chose discipline. While they chased attention, you built control. Understand this clearly. You were never lost. You were preparing. Silence shaped your focus. Discipline refined your actions. And now, that combination leads to one outcome: dominance. And if you needed a model, look at Thomas Shelby. Silent, calculated, unstoppable. This was never about being seen. It was about becoming. So disappear if you must. Just make sure when you return, they don't recognize you.